welcome aboard, everybody. Michael Cohen here with you. Sports Talk Nation is the first official day of training camp as the New York Jets reported to camp today, and a lot to discuss, including the leak of a old school uniform. Well, folks, the Jets have opened up training camp, as we all know. Now we begin the process to find out whether the product and all the hype that we've had this offseason since the acquisition of Aaron Rodgers is going to come to fruition. As the Jets are beginning to embark on this upcoming season, obviously they start early, a couple weeks early, about a week and a half early, because they're all going to be partaking in the Hall of Fame game down there in Canton, Ohio against the Cleveland Browns. This summer, it's going to be all about the Jets. All the attention, all the national media is going to be on this Jets team. We're going to have Hard Knocks covering this team on a regular basis. Of course, the Jets have been trying to resist that and telling HBO what they can and cannot film. So that's going to be interesting to see how that comes together. You're going to have One's Jets Drive giving the Jets, of course, coverage based on, that's, of course, the team's own version of Hard Knocks, if you will. Then you have the national and local media that's going to be a blitz every single day with coverage of this football team that is now considered one of the favorites, believe it or not, to represent the AFC in potentially a Super Bowl down the road. We'll see if that comes to fruition, of course. Now, already into day one, we're going to get into the uniform leak in just a moment. Just hold your hot horses. We're going to talk about that in a second. That's what this main video is about here. We've already had in day one a couple of big stories. The number one story, of course, Denzel Mims is going to be released, or probably will be released by the team if they can't make a trade with anybody to get some kind of compensation back for him. Really, it was a numbers game, folks, and that's just the way it goes. So the Jets have a plethora of weapons to go to, from Alan Lazard and Randall Cobb, who we already know that Cobb's going to start the camp on the PUP list, but you have Randall Cobb there as well. C.J. Uzomah, the tight end. You have, of course, Garrett Wilson, the All-Pro receiver, going into his second full season. And you also have Corey Davis. So the Jets have a good group of receivers. It was a numbers game, and Mims was going to lose out, and was going to lose out on opportunities. So the Jets are going to let him go and try to hook on with somebody else. The other big news, as I just kind of alluded to, was the PUP list. Randall Cobb is starting training camp anyway on the PUP list. But the bigger name on the PUP list is going to be Breece Hall, the Jets' leading rusher from last season. And, of course, a guy that Jets are banking on a lot going into this season. They're hoping that he could be healthy coming back off the ACL injury in his knee. What does that mean? Does it mean it's just a precaution, just to make sure things are healing properly, making sure that he doesn't get banged around too much? That's probably most likely what it is. But it's not going. One thing it's going to do is it will continue the rumor mill and the speculation of the Jets possibly trying to make something happen with former Viking running back Dalvin Cook, who is still a free agent, by the way. And as we all know, right now running backs aren't exactly getting big contracts, i.e. Saquon Barkley. So we'll see whether that the Jets and Dalvin Cook is a thing to be watching down the road here with Breece Hall on the PUP list. Now, there was, as I'm working this afternoon at the station at Fox Sports New Jersey, I all of a sudden get a little a message sent to me by a couple of good friends of mine, Mr. Rick Laughlin, Dan Feuerstein, two guys who have contributed to this podcast before, and there is that short little video. It's kind of like the Zapruder film, if you will. You have to see it to believe. It's like a Sasquatch video, right? And you see a player, looks like C.J. Uzomah, kind of rocking back and forth behind a curtain. And what do you see? You see a white jersey. You see what looks like the uniform that the Jets used to wear in the 1980s and the 1990s. Only, of course, the big difference being from the 80s to 90s is that there is no black trim here. This is a full 80s throwback white face mask. You got the what looks like the green collar, the bold type there on the numbers. You can see it right there. Are the Jets going to bring back this look for as an alternate look? Because right now everybody is going throwbacks right now. Everyone's pulling them out of the closet. Last year we saw the Giants bring back their 80s and 90s throwbacks. One of the best throwbacks as far as I'm concerned. The throwbacks they used to wear as a full-time uniform back when they won 2 Super Bowls with Bill Parcells and Lawrence Taylor. You also know that the Patriots are bringing back the Pat the Patriot look for this season. The Buccaneers, they're bringing back the creamsicle look. They've already had a presentation on that. The Vikings, even though their uniform kind of looks like already like a bit of a throwback, they're going with the full hardcore throwback from the 70s. You have the Cleveland Browns bringing in a white alternate helmet, which looks pretty good. And then, of course, I am so happy to see this uniform back. The Seahawks bringing back their old classic uniforms of the royal blue with the silver helmets and the old classic Seahawks logo on the side of the helmets. So teams are bringing back what was once old is now new again. It's like we're going back in time. Look, it's just the way things are going in the last couple of years. Everyone's going hard to go back to the 80s or the 90s, bring out the VHS players, crank out the Super Nintendo, the certainly Duck Hunt, all those great things that we all enjoyed back in those days in the 80s and the 90s. And teams right now are hot and trying to go back to looks that were of a previous nature and very popular. So there's always been this fever pitch by Jet fans to go back to one of their previous looks. Obviously, the one that I would prefer is the one of the jersey that I am wearing right now. This being their more recent incarnation of the Joe Namath era uniform. It's just a classic look. I would prefer to see this look come back, in my opinion, over, let's say, the 80s look. But there has been a strong call by Jet fans to have that 80s look come back with the green helmet. I guess you would say speeding Jet logo on the side of the helmet. And the solid green if they're wearing the road uniforms, white if they're wearing home green uniforms, white shoulder stripes on the side of the sleeves, and it looks like that's going to come back now. Of course, that's going to harken back to the days of the sack exchange. You link that up with the fact that Joe Klecko is going into the National Football League Hall of Fame in a couple of weeks, so it kind of makes sense from that standpoint. Talk about promote Klecko's going into the Hall of Fame, bringing back the sack exchange uniforms as an alternate this year. Now, how many games they're going to wear that uniform, if it is indeed true that this is the real deal, I don't know. It hasn't been official yet. Nothing's official yet. But it looks like we are going to get that look coming back. Not my choice. Whenever I see that look, I mean, I'm kind of reminded of a lot of bad football. The A.J. Dewey highlights in the AFC Championship game from the 80s, or even the Rich Kotite era. That's kind of what I'm reminded of when I see these uniforms. Not exactly my choice. Again, I would prefer the classic look, the Joe Namath era uniform that was then reestablished in 1998, and the Jets held for 20 years through 2018. It's a classic look. It's just clean. The white helmet, the classic Jets logo inside of that oval, and then, of course, these classic jerseys, as you see that I'm wearing here. Not only was it a clean look, they won in that uniform. Obviously, the Super Bowl being the most obvious from '69 during the Joe Namath era, but when they reinstituted this uniform, winning a couple of division titles, getting the 3 AFC Championship games, they did that in this look, in this uniform. I wish they would find a way to bring it back. Maybe they will next year, but it's slightly disappointing for me to see that that's not going to be the look that's coming back, that they're going back to the 80s look. It's not the worst look in the world. I mean, it's certainly better than the stealth black uniforms that they've been wearing, and certainly better than the current look that they have. Folks, I want you to jump in the comment section. Tell me what you think about the Jets going back to the 80s and possibly bringing back that look, the sack exchange look that they used to wear for quite a while in the 80s and obviously in the 90s. So we'll see if they're the real deal. When and if the Jets announce them in the next coming days, if not weeks, we'll have to wait and see. Again, kill the like and subscribe button. Comment below, what do you think about the leak of the Jets' return to the 80s look? We'll talk to you next time.